Our movie begins in the savannah forests with a tribe of monkeys, and it was clear that they were happy, dancing to celebrate that the queen, wife of Simon, the king of the tribe, had given birth to a new baby who would be the prince of the tribe and heir to the throne. The king stood in the middle of the tribe, very happy because of their celebration, waiting for Dr. Vladimir to call him to see his son. When Dr. Vladimir arrived, he told the king that there was a small problem and he had to see it for himself. The king was surprised when he entered to see his wife and found that she had given birth to twins, not just one monkey. However, the monkey that was born first, who was supposed to be the heir, was very weak, small, and did not resemble the other monkeys in the tribe, unlike the other monkey, who was strong like the rest of the tribe. The tribe's witch entered and advised the king to get rid of the weak monkey because he didn't resemble them and wouldn't be of any use to them, and also wouldn't be able to be the heir. The king hesitated to do so, but the witch influenced him, and before the queen woke up, he ordered Vladimir to get rid of the weak monkey as soon as possible. The queen woke up very ill and asked about her children, telling them to take care of them, and then she passed away. Simon took the strong monkey and presented him to the tribe, telling them that he was the new heir named Vanya. The monkeys were all joyful and welcomed him. At the same time, Vladimir took the weak baby to the wolves to get rid of him as the king had ordered. When he came to throw the monkey, the baby grabbed his hand and wouldn't let go. Vladimir was touched by the moment and decided to keep him, seeing it as a sign that the monkey should live. But then he changed his mind, as his loyalty was first and foremost to the king. He tried to throw the monkey again, and the monkey fell and was almost eaten by a wolf, causing an injury to Vladimir's hand. But fortunately, the baby's leg got caught in some tree branches, saving himself. The monkey remained hanging in the tree until a monkey named Ayan came and rescued him. Ayan tried to get the baby to stand on his feet, but his arm was injured and he was too weak to walk. Ayan carried the baby on his back and took him with him, feeling very happy and sympathetic toward him. He named the baby Edward. Edward lived with Ayan until he grew older, and they got along well. One day they fought over figs that they had hidden from each other. Edward saw a rat with the figs and running away with them, so he chased after it, but his injured arm, caused by the wolf when he was a baby, made him move slowly. He couldn't catch the rat in the trees and fell. Edward started thinking of a way to catch the rat without moving. He came up with the idea to make a trap from the sap tree wood around him. Before he could start on the trap, he heard the bell for the start of a monkey ball game in the tribe. He wanted to go watch, but Ayan refused to go because the monkeys bullied him. Edward told him to give them another chance, and they went to watch the match. Vanya was the winner, playing skillfully and throwing the ball into the hanging skull. The ball rolled near Ayan and he wanted to grab it, but Edward stopped him from doing so. Ayan didn't listen, and because of this, he and Edward fell onto the monkeys that were playing, and the ball fell into a hole. The monkeys were surprised by them, but Edward used his wit. He took a stick from the sap tree, stuck it to the ball, and pulled it out of the hole. The monkeys were happy because he was able to return their ball. Vanya arrived to take the ball and throw it to continue the game, but the ball got stuck to his hand and he couldn't get it off. All the monkeys tried to help him. King Simon was sitting with Vladimir and the witch, watching the game. The ball fell on the king's head, and Vladimir tried to remove it, but it stuck to the king's hair, and a large portion of his hair was pulled off when they tried to remove it. When the witch saw Edward, she noticed that his legs had a unique shape, and she realized that he was the son of King Simon, the one they had tried to get rid of when he was a baby. The witch went to Vladimir and asked him why he hadn't gotten rid of Edward, as they had agreed with the king. Vladimir tried to lie to her and said that he had indeed disposed of him, but the witch ordered him to fix this mess. Vanya was eavesdropping on their conversation and overheard everything. He realized that he had an older brother who might take the throne from him. He was furious and began plotting a way to get rid of Edward so that he wouldn't lose the kingdom. The next day, Edward saw Ayan talking to the birds about a place called the White Mountain. The place was full of trees, lakes, and plenty of food. Edward told him that this place wasn't real and didn't exist. But Ian insisted it did and said that the birds had told him about it. Suddenly, Marcel and Serge appeared, two monkeys, and they told him that the king wanted to see Edward. Edward went and stood before the king, and they accused him of being a sorcerer. But Edward denied it, saying he had never practiced any kind of magic in his life. All he did were tricks that relied on intelligence. To prove his point, Edward picked up some tree leaves and made a crown for the king. The king and the monkeys were amazed. Edward took a large tree branch and placed water in it, creating something like a mirror so the king could see himself. He also made a chair for the king out of leaves, and the king sat on it while the witch watched everything that was happening. She became very angry and sent a swarm of insects to attack them. King Simon fell from his chair on the hill, but he grabbed a tree branch before hitting the ground and managed to climb back up. The witch told them that Edward was the reason for what had happened to the king and that he had used magic to summon the insects. Vanya took advantage of the situation, grabbed Edward, and threw him off the hill. Ian was scared for him and tried to save him. Edward landed on a tree branch, and at the same time, King Simon started yelling at Vanya for what he had done to Edward. Edward wasn't hurt from the fall, and when he woke up, he saw Ian on a branch trying to reach out to help him, but he couldn't reach him. Ian left him hanging and walked off into the forest. There, Edward found an ostrich in front of him with some fruit in its beak. He tried to take it from the ostrich and was surprised that he could stand on his feet. Edward ran backward near the ostrich, overjoyed that he could move and run so fast. But suddenly, a herd of rhinoceroses started moving quickly toward Edward and almost trampled him. The king saw what was happening and managed to save Edward. He stood in front of the rhinos and used all his strength to push them away from Edward. One of the rhinos charged at Edward, but the king reached him just in time and saved him again. When Edward woke up, he checked on the king who had saved his life. The king asked Edward to forgive him for abandoning him when he was a child and revealed that he was his father. Then the king died. Vanya took his father's body to the forest, while Edward was left in shock from what he had just heard. He kept thinking about the king's words and couldn't get them out of his mind. The monkey tribe prepared to bid farewell to the king, and they crowned Vanya as his successor. Vanya decided to exile Vladimir as punishment for failing to eliminate his brother as the king had ordered earlier. He appointed his cousin Serge in his place. Serge pledged his loyalty and brought some monkeys for Vanya to choose from as his bride, as it was essential for there to be a queen. Vanya told them he would choose his bride after the coronation ceremony. The monkeys began to flee due to the lightning. Ian and Edward arrived and took the king's body and buried him. Lightning struck a tree in the forest, and Edward was fascinated by the fire. He grabbed a stick and stood before it, realizing he could handle it with ease. The rain came and extinguished the fire. There was a tornado in the forest, and Vladimir couldn't find anywhere to hide after being banished by the witch. The storm swept him away. Edward tried to escape from the storm, but the tornado pulled him in. While inside the tornado, he saw many animals trying to save themselves. He noticed a sad monkey being swept away from her family by the storm. He tried to help her, but the tornado's whirlpool threw him far away. The tornado also tossed the monkey. Edward grabbed her hand, trying to save her, but the storm was too strong, and they were both pulled in again. Edward tied himself with a rope to a tree and managed to pull himself and the monkey to safety, but unfortunately the rope snapped and they fell into a pit. Edward was able to climb out easily thanks to his legs and was holding the monkey with one hand. The storm ended, and the next day, the monkey woke up and slapped Edward across the face, not realizing that he had saved her life. When she saw the destruction around her, she began to cry as she knew her family's tree had been destroyed. She ran away, leaving Edward behind. He followed her, passing by a rhinoceros herd and through the valley until he finally caught up with her and started talking to her. She introduced herself and said her name was Lucy. She was surprised to see Edward walking on two legs and asked him to teach her so she could be like him. They sat together on a large hill and watched the sunset. Edward pointed to a tree and told her that his family lived there. He asked her to come with him so she could meet them, and Lucy agreed. On their way to the tree, they encountered volcanic lava. Edward used his intelligence, grabbed a stick, and lit it on fire to light their way. When they reached the tree, the monkeys were surprised that Edward could use fire. Edward told them that the forest was beautiful and there was nothing to fear. Fania's brother appeared and ordered him to throw the flame from his hand. Edward wanted to show that he could use it for many things. He gathered many sticks and lit them all, but he lost control and a big fire broke out in the place. The monkeys were very scared, and the witch took advantage of the situation, saying that all the problems in the tribe were caused by Edward. Because of that, the monkeys hesitated. Edward and Lucy were very sad and went to the wolves' den, taking the fire with them. Edward scared the wolves away and they left him the place. Edward and Lucy lived there, and she began to teach him how to hunt animals and knock fruit off trees using stones. They discovered the sculpture that start a fire with the stones and cook their food. They also learned how to deal with the wolves so they wouldn't attack them. One day, while they were cooking, the monkeys smelled the food and really liked it, but the witch forbade them from leaving the tree. The monkeys began to rebel against her and left the tree, except for Ruby, who stayed with Fania. The rest of the monkeys went to Edward's place. When Lucy saw them, she was furious and wanted them to leave, but they spoke to Edward and said they were his family from the same tree and that he should welcome them. Edward agreed and told them he would feed them this time only, and by morning they had to leave. He convinced Lucy of this. They all spent the night together and were very happy. Fania was watching from afar, upset that his family and tribe had left him alone. The witch decided to take revenge on Edward, and the rest of the tribe decided to live with her. Weeks later, Edward and Lucy got married and were expecting a child. The monkeys helped Edward build a new city after they all learned to walk on their feet. They also learned how to get their food and light fires. One day, a monkey found a stone that left a mark on the rocks. He told Edward they could use it to paint on the rocks. While they were talking, the witch sent a large swarm of locusts that ate everything. The monkeys decided to attack the witch and Fania. Lucy told Edward to go save his brother while she would help the injured monkeys. Edward went with his wolf friend to speak to his brother Fania and warn him, but unfortunately, the monkeys had already reached the tree where Fania and Ruby were. Sergei suggested to Fania that they make a deal instead of being thrown out, allowing him and Ruby to live with them on the tree. But the monkeys had a different opinion, rejecting the deal and becoming very angry. They began to destroy Fania's tree. Edward tried to stop them, but he couldn't. The monkeys tried to hit Fania, and Edward tried to defend him, but a flame fell from the monkeys and burned the entire tree. Edward grabbed onto a tree trunk and managed to save Ruby. While saving her, a branch fell on him. He called out to the monkeys to help him, but they were afraid of the fire and all ran away. The witch died because of the fire, and Fania intervened at the last moment to save his brother, Edward. He asked for forgiveness for everything he had done. When the place burned down, the monkeys didn't know where to go. They lost all hope and said they were going to die. But Edward remembered the birds and recalled Ian's words about the White Mountain. He told the monkeys they wouldn't die and that they would follow the birds to a new place to live. They followed the birds for several days until they reached the White Mountain. It was a very beautiful place, and Edward couldn't believe it was real. Edward saw his friend Ian there and was overjoyed. They all lived happily in the White Mountain. That's the end of the movie. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with all our new content. See you in the next video, God willing. Peace.